welcome. It is the 7th day. It is also the 8th day. How can that be? How can it be, Paul? You're a math major. I know it. It's amazing. It is the 7th day of the week, the Shabbat, but it is the 8th day of Passover. So we're in the midst of counting the BaOmer and eating our last day of matzah and preparing for other delicious malted beverages that come after Passover is over. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Welcome. It's good to have you joining us from wherever you are in Macon, Georgia, or in the world. So let's praise the Lord with our worship team here and enjoy fellowship together.
He who makes peace in his heights, make peace upon all Israel.
Ose shalom bimoma, huya say shalom aleinu. Ose shalom bimoma, huya say shalom aleinu. Ose shalom bimoma, huya say.
Oh, done messed that up.
Oh, say shalom bimoma, huya say shalom aleinu. Oh, say shalom bimoma, huya say shalom aleinu. Oh, say shalom bimoma, huya say shalom aleinu. Huya say shalom, huya say shalom, shalom aleinu. Ve'alko Yisrael, huya say shalom, huya say shalom, shalom aleinu. Ve'alko Yisrael. Oh, say shalom bimoma, huya say shalom aleinu. Oh, say shalom bimoma, huya say
Trying to get fancy.
Oh, say shalom bimoma, huya say shalom aleinu. Huya say shalom, huya say shalom, shalom aleinu. Ve'alko Yisrael, huya say shalom, huya say shalom, shalom aleinu. Ve'alko Yisrael, huya say shalom, huya say shalom, shalom aleinu. Ve'alko Yisrael.
Amen, amen. Like that? Is it in tune? Ready?
God of new begin, God of a second chance, your grace an endless river, your love an avalanche. There in my darkest moments, all burnt to the ground. That's where your mercy found me. That's where your love came down. You turned my mourning into dancing. You turn my sorrow into praise. Give me beauty for ashes, beauty for ashes. You give me beauty Love spoken, love spoken new tomorrow. Open my eyes to see. Love washed away the sadness. Love came and rescued me. You turned my mourning into dancing. You turned my sorrow into praise. Oh, give me beauty for ashes, beauty for ashes. Oh, give me beauty for ashes, beauty for ashes. Oh, thank you, Lord, beauty for ashes, beauty for ashes. Oh, you give me beauty for ashes, beauty for ashes. I thank you, God. I'm overwhelmed by your incredible love. You make everything new. Oh, I thank you, God. I'm overwhelmed by your incredible love. You make everything new. Oh, I thank you, God, for all you've done and left to do. You make everything new. I thank you, God, for all you've done and left to do. Oh, you make everything new. Give me beauty for ashes, beauty for ashes. Give me beauty for ashes, beauty for ashes. Oh, thank you, Lord, beauty for ashes, beauty for ashes. You give me beauty for ashes, beauty for ashes. Oh, thank you, Lord, beauty for ashes, beauty for ashes. Give me beauty for ashes, beauty for ashes. You give me beauty for ashes, beauty for ashes. You give me beauty for ashes, beauty for ashes.
There's something that we usually say before the Aaronic blessing, because we're not really the ones that present it. I think I've heard Darren say that before. Can you hear that song? But I was thinking that because we're not priests, that we basically present it as, just, I guess, tradition. Am I? According to the That's what I'm. According to the word.
shine upon you and be gracious to you. Lord, turn his face toward you and give you peace. Amen. Amen.
This is the season of the counting of the Omer. So last year, Lance and I wrote a song for it. And we decided that even though some people don't know what the Omer is, we still need to sing this song. And it's from Psalm 67, which you're reading before you count the Omer every night. And we'll talk a little bit more about that some today. Darren, this song is Psalm 67. You got it? Okay. It's very easy, so I hope that you'll sing it along with us. What do you think? God's gonna bless us, God's gonna bless us, and all the ends of the earth will fear Him. God's gonna bless us, God's gonna bless us, and all the ends of the earth will fear Him. Let the people praise you, oh God. Let all the peoples praise you. Let the people praise you, oh God. Let all the peoples praise you. God's gonna bless us, God's gonna bless us, and all the ends of the earth will fear Him. I said, God's gonna bless us, God's gonna bless us, and all the ends of the earth will fear Him. Let the people praise you, oh God. Let all the people praise you. Let the people praise you, oh God. Let all the peoples praise you. Let the people praise you, oh God. Let all the peoples praise you. Let the people praise you, oh God. Let all the people praise you. Salvation among all of the nations, may your way be known upon all the earth. Salvation among all of the nations, may your way be known upon all the earth. Let the people praise you, oh God. Let all the people praise you. Let the people praise you, oh God. Let all the people praise you. Let the people praise you, oh God. Let all the peoples praise you. Let the people praise you, oh God. Let all the people praise you. Ready? Let the people praise you, oh God. Let all the people praise you. Let the people praise you, oh God. Let all the people praise you. Better. You can do better. One more. Let the people praise you, oh God. Let all the peoples praise you. Let the people praise you, oh God. Let all the people praise you. Let the people praise you, oh God. Let all the people praise you. Let the people praise you, oh God. Let all the people praise you. Good, you can sing that before you count the Omer. Let's stand. Ooh, nice. A nice new chord. Ya-la-la, ya-la-la. La 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Baruch Hu et Adonai. Am Mevorach. Baruch
be seated. Let's stand together once more. Adonai, open my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Adonai, open my to the blessed God, who is faithful through the generations. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avot, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Hayel HaGadol HaGibor HaNorah, El Elyon Gomer Chasadim Tovim, V'konei HaKol, V'zocher Chasdei Avot, U'mevii Goel Livnei V'neihem Leman Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer Moshiach U'Magen, Baruch Atah Adonai Magen Avraham. The God who is faithful to raise the dead, particularly remembering that during this season, and as the disciples were waiting for further instructions during these days, as Yeshua was preparing to ascend to the Father 40 days after, and then 50 days, giving the Ruach HaKodesh, but all of this leading to the resurrection of the dead. Blessed are you, O Lord our God. Wait. Baruch atah Adonai mechayei hametim. To the Holy One seated above the heavens,
Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzevaot, Baruch Ata Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh. To the God who sanctifies the Shabbat and the Hazminim, the festivals, including this concluding festival of Matzot. Baruch Ata Adonai Mikadesh HaShabbat V'Hazmanim. To the God who is restoring his presence to Zion. Baruch Ata Adonai HaMachazir Shechinato LeTzion. To the God worthy of all thanksgiving. Baruch Ata Adonai Hatov Shimcha Luchanei Lehodo. God who grants us peace. Baruch Ata Adonai Havarech et Amo Yisrael B'Shalom. When you pray, pray like this, our Master said. Avinu Shabashamayim, Yitkadesh Mecha, Tavo Machutecha, Yeaser Ritzonecha, Kasher Bashamayim Gam Ba'aretz, Et Lachmenu Lemacha, Telanu Hayom, Umechalanu al chovoteinu ka'asher mechalnu gam anachnu lechayaveinu yal tivienu lidei nisayon im tatzilenu min hara ki lecha hamamlecha Ve'hagevura ve'hatiferet le'ol me'olamim amen. For the sake of our Master Yeshua and his merit and his virtue, may the sayings of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be favorable Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who has given us the way of salvation in Messiah Yeshua. Amen. You may be seated. A Shabbat Shalom to all. Happy you're here with us today in person and online. Your giving can be done any way you like. Online with Tithely, or that link will tell you everything you need to know. Shabbat, Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat.
It's a complicated song. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat. Shabbat, Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael Chai. 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 Od Avinu Chai, Od Avinu Chai. Od Avinu, Od Avinu, Od Avinu Chai. Od Avinu Chai, Od Avinu Chai. Od Avinu, Od Avinu, Od Avinu Chai. Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, good morning. It is so great to see y'all this morning. Where are my notes? There they are. I found them. Wow. I didn't think we'd have this many people after we didn't leave so late last night. It's so great to see y'all. Lance, Travis, Ray, wow. Travis, you are coming out, brother, and I am so glad to see you. Not like that. You are coming. In a wonderful way. Man, you are just releasing it, and you do bring us into the worship of the Lord tremendously. Not that you don't, Damien, because you do as well. Well, we'll talk about it later. Thank y'all for being here live and in person and online. We just want to welcome Colleen Russell and Danielle Oliver from California watching us online. Karen Forbes all the way from London. Tom Sisler from, did I say that right? Sisler. Tom Sisler from Ohio. Jane Ritchie from Pennsylvania and Jordan Hedrick from Tennessee. Those two are joining us today. And also Miranda and Wesley Jones, for some reason, are watching us online today. I don't understand after all that. They just did a little bit yesterday. But we cannot thank Miranda for putting together the Meal of Messiah last night. What a wonderful job that she did. And Miranda, we just thank you. And I thank all of y'all that participated in helping and bringing and cleaning up. Hey, we got this place cleaned up and set back up quick, fast, and in a hurry. So thank y'all so much. And we have Hebrew class today at 1:30 for the kids. And that will be a live event here, so it will be shown on Shalom at Home as well. And also at 3 p.m. today, we'll have Perkei a boat class, which will be 6 weeks if Darren can condense it there, can keep it there. I don't think we've ever tried to do a Perkei a boat that lasted only 6 weeks with Darren. So there's a lot of great information. So that will be also live and Shalom on Home today. And then tomorrow morning, don't forget we have Talbot and Tea with Lance as our leader. And it's some great, great learning. And then next week, what is coming up next week? I think we have a bar mitzvah next week. Yes. Remember, 10:30 start time. Be here. If you come at 11, you're going to miss a great, great event. So please come. Make sure that you are here at 10:30. And those of you who are online, please join us at 10:30 as well. And don't forget his mitzvah project is school supplies. So please bring some school supplies for him. And then on May 15th, we have the Shavuot Flower Project. There will be more details going out about that in this week. And the BaOmer fish fry will be. I'll mess that all up, man. I'll mess that up. As long as I don't mess up the cooking, we're okay. And hopefully I'll be here for that. BaOmer. BaOmer. One of these days, God's going to give me the perfect mouth. And also, we had the construction going on our pavilion, so let's please stay out of that area unless you are actively working in it, and we're having it done professionally and done paying somebody, so none of y'all have any business out there, especially the kids. So, but anyway, so... Yep. And we just thank y'all for being here. Shabbat Shalom, and have a wonderful week.
Dog BaOmer. It's that pause right between the B and the O that really sets it apart. Dog BaOmer is a Messianic Jewish tradition. There is something called Log BaOmer, which is the 33rd day of the count between the Omer, the count of the Omer that happens. But for us, as Messianic Jews, we recall the fish meal that Yeshua prepared for his disciples on the shore of Lake Kinneret. So it was during this Omer time, as Yeshua was cooking for them. So we have ourselves a good old southern catfish fry here. No, we don't eat catfish. Catfish doesn't have scales. It has fins, but no scales. It also happens to eat fecal matter off the bottom of the ground, off the bottom of the river, so we don't eat that either. This is Dog BaOmer. It's a wonderful time to come and just hang out and eat some fish and recall the goodness of this period in the spring. Kids, let's go to Shabbat school. Seems like there's something I'm supposed to announce. There is. We are serious now about the Israel trip. It looks as if, there is going to be an opportunity to do that in the spring. So the thing that makes us go from planning serious to action serious is knowing the number of people who are interested in going. So that will probably take place when? During the Omer next spring. We'll go to Israel. It's a great time to be there. We'll actually be there, I think, possibly for the Independence Day in Israeli Independence Day, which is a nice thing to do. So if you're online or in person, you need to send an email to members@shalommacon.org, 1M in Shalom Macon, members@shalommacon.org, and let us know you're interested in going to Israel with us next spring. Who wants to go to Israel next spring? Okay, you're on. Yisimcha Elohim ke'Ephraim v'chi Menashe. Thank you, girls. I know you organized this. Yisimech Elohim ke'Sarah Rivka Rachel v'Leah. Father, bless these beautiful girls and handsome boys, and let them grow up to be mighty warriors for you. Let us play our part as a community, as a family of support for all of their spiritual growth, and may their parents be inspired and filled with the Ruach HaKodesh. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha, yo'er Adonai panav elecha v'yihuneka, yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. It's really fun to touch nerves, spiritual nerves, to touch them, not to like twist them or anything. But what we started talking about last week is an emotional topic. I got a couple of lengthy opinions, articles, and assessments of my teaching after last week's message, primarily centered on these two words: I disagree. Which is fine. I read them all. I read thousands of words of the differing opinions. You know why? Because they're pretty good. I mean, they're good points, and here's the great part about it. No one knows. No one knows. So I can feel very confident in saying, great. But the thing is, no matter how strong someone's opinion is, no one knows. The consensus of scholarship is that New Testament accounts represent a crucifixion occurring on a Friday. But a Thursday or Wednesday crucifixion has also been proposed based on 2 Shabbats in that week. A Friday Shabbat for the first day of Hag HaMatzot, a Saturday for the weekly Sabbath. Some people say it happened on Thursday. Some people say it happened on Wednesday. Why did they do that? Because of one verse in Matthew where Yeshua said, like Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights. They based the entire rest of the story on that one verse. So Wednesday it had to be. Well, that actually ends up being 4 days, but that's a whole nother message. Some have, there's all kinds of argument. But here's the telling statement from Joseph Fitzmyer. Catholic priest, well, you can't listen to him. I can. He's a New Testament scholar, absolutely well-respected, written thousands of pages of commentary on the Jewish foundations, the Greek, the early church, a very well-respected guy. You know what he says? No attempt should be made to harmonize the Synoptics and the Johannine traditions. No attempt should be made to try to reconcile Matthew, Mark, and Luke with John. It's a pretty strong statement, isn't it? In other words, what he's saying, no one can really know. But that's no fun. But before we jump into part 2 of what I started last week, I want to share something else. And it is going to rub some people's feathers the wrong way, which I guess hurts. I mean, if you get your feathers rubbed the wrong way, we wouldn't know we don't have them. But I want to say that anyone who attempts to dismiss the discrepancies that we're talking about, anyone who attempts to discredit someone who suggests that there are discrepancies in the text, not just the Gospels, in the Torah, in the Tanakh, we find apparent discrepancies. Anyone who tries to discredit those discredits themselves. That's the truth of that statement. Because to say that there are no difficulties or discrepancies and then provide your reason and your theological support and your interpretation of the Greek, which often happens to be only your interpretation of the Greek because you're something, I don't know what. And then after you've provided all of these things to then say, there's your answer. There's no discrepancy here. And you say, but sit down, shut up, don't ask me any questions. That's the answer you need. That is not a useful apologetic. That is not a defense of the Scriptures in any way. And I value education. I really do. PhDs, MDivs, seminary, yeshiva degrees, medical degrees, law degrees, whatever I value. I value people who put that kind of blood, sweat, and tears into the training to critically think through things, especially when it comes to theology, the Bible, understanding original languages, grammar, syntax, all of that. I respect it very deeply. I do not have a PhD. But I read and learn, and I'm relatively smart. I passed high school and college, and I did pretty well. But I read from a lot of other smart people, real smart people, and I listen to them, scholars, very, very, very intelligent people. And sometimes these brilliant minds, the place they arrive at the end of the story, and not just this, but others, I don't know. The Talmud has one of my favorite idioms when it says, teach your tongue to say, I don't know. If more people knew that, man, it'd be a better world. Who are comfortable to say, you know what, I don't know, but here's an opinion. Or to settle this with certainty is impossible, but consider this. And why is that important? Why is it important that someone would have the confidence in the Bible to say that? Well, first of all, I'm not really trying to convince you of anything. And no one really is trying to convince existing disciples of Yeshua of why they should believe in Yeshua. what we're talking to and about is the critics. We're talking to the skeptics. We're talking to the Jewish anti-missionaries who read the Gospels and say, your book is a lie, Stephen. These things, they contradict each other. How can you say any of things? Or to the person who once was sitting in the church pews and had questions and was told, don't ask questions. There's a conflict. Oh, did you want me to turn it on? Am I supposed to start over?
Yep.
No, you heard me, right? To say to someone, there's no problems here, is like me saying, hey, what do you guys think about my new blonde hair? You like it? Well, your hair's not blonde. Yes, it is. But I'm looking at, shut up. Don't ask questions. What you see is never what is. They call me Mr. Golden Hair. It's a silly thing to deny the obvious, right? And so this long thing about this is only to say, I'm not suggesting that I'm right. I don't know if I'm right, and we won't know. And by the way, when we get to the Messianic age and we're having this conversation with Yeshua and we say, so let's talk about that crucifixion thing, I imagine him saying, not that again, that doesn't matter, we're here now. But it was on Friday. No, just kidding. I need to stay on track because last week no one liked the fact that I left that cliffhanger. I did it for your own benefit so that you wouldn't be here all day. So now you will be here all day because I have to finish this part too. But I'm going to present to you a case, an opinion, one of many opinions, but it's a really good opinion, and it's a Messianic opinion, which is appropriate, somewhat unique, considering our place here. And, you know, you're going to leave here with some new thoughts in your head. You're going to leave here thinking about some things, and you're going to expand your knowledge of the history and context of the Bible, and that is worth doing. But my real hope is that maybe you'll be First Peterized. 1 Peter 3:15, which says, always be prepared to give an answer for the hope that is within you, to give a reason for what you believe. Someone sent me a text message this week and said, you know what? Just this week somebody asked me these questions and I wasn't really prepared to answer them. So thanks for digging in. So that's the thing we're doing here. And you just might make them think when it's all said and done. That'll be great, right? I can't review last week very much because we'll be here literally all day. But basically, by nearly all educated suggestions, and you can put this slide up, by nearly all educated suggestions, we have a dilemma. The synoptics present, or seem to present, Yeshua and the disciples celebrating a Passover Seder at the traditional time on the 14th of Nisan with everyone in Jerusalem. That was on a Thursday night. A crucifixion on the first day of the festival, which took place on Friday the 15th, after the Seders had happened the night before, that Yeshua died on a Shabbat, on the high Sabbath, which was this 15th of the Friday the 15th, just prior to the weekly Sabbath. So Friday, crucifixion and burial, it's already happening on Passover. That moves into Shabbat. There's 2 Shabbats that week. That's what we talked about with the Gospels in a nutshell. John tells a different story. In John's story, all this happened before the Passover. Yeshua had a meal, but he doesn't mention it as a Passover Seder or eating the Pesach or anything. John's chronology has Yeshua crucified on the 14th of Nisan. That is Friday before Passover, meaning that at that night when the sun went down and Joseph and Nicodemus put him in the grave, it moved into the holiday of Passover. The 15th of Nisan began the Friday evening into Shabbat, and it coincided with the weekly Sabbath. And everyone joyously enjoyed their Passover Seders that Friday the 14th, except, of course, Yeshua and the disciples, who were probably totally devastated. Now, those are pretty big differences, and we highlighted some differences and difficulties with the synoptic chronology. There are apparent contradictions, so much so that most scholars dismiss the synoptics, except the Johannine chronology. And I remind you of Fitzmyer's comment, no attempt should be made to try to reconcile these two things. But let's do it anyway. Who's right? That's the question. Well, according to historical precedent, sign of the times, the diversity of Jewish practice, and the opinion of one Messianic scholar, Rabbi Yechiel Lichtenstein from the 19th century. You ready? Who's right? You ready? They both are. And you knew that was coming, right? It had to. But how? How can it be? After spending all this time, there is a possibility of reconciling these conflicting accounts without destroying either one of them. So we're going to take this look. But in order to do it, we need to look, first of all, at the festival calendar. We need to look at the Omer count. And we need to look at our first century friends, the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Okay? So history lesson in a nutshell. Here we go. The Jewish calendar in the days of the Master was not fixed. It was not like pulling out your iPhone and looking at what June 16th is going to look like in 2028. It was not fixed. The Sanhedrin, the ruling body, relied on eyewitness accounts of the sighting of the moon. Remember, the calendar is lunar in Judaism, right? Starts with the sighting of the little crescent, the little sign of the moon. And when those verified witnesses came to the Sanhedrin to report the sighting of the crescent of the new moon, then the Sanhedrin declared that the new month had started. And sometimes, though, that created variability in the calendar. Now, the festivals are obviously determined by the months and the days. But, well, and that's not really any different. And the Sanhedrin then was in charge of, had a very significant influence on when the festivals were celebrated. Just like the United States government, if we declare a national holiday, that's when the holiday is celebrated. Imagine that's what the Sanhedrin was doing. But sometimes that resulted in technical errors. If inclement weather, cloudy skies, some other unforeseen circumstance, other irregularities prevented the accurate sighting and reporting of the moon, if it was missed, it didn't matter. The Sanhedrin's setting the date for the new month stuck. That's what the people followed. Okay? So there was variability. There's an interesting Gentile reference to this from Epiphanius, who's talking to Gentiles about when to celebrate the Passover. He says, "You shall not calculate the calendar yourself, but celebrate the feast whenever your brethren from the circumcision do. Keep it together with them. Even if they err, do not be concerned." This is a historical text verifying that that calendar had some fluidity and that the festival dates could change they're always going to be on the 15th of Nisan. But it depends when you declare the 1st of Nisan for you get to the 15th. I'll make some more sense of that if you just stick with me here. But the point is, the legislative body of the Sanhedrin has power and influence to set the start of months and the days of the festival, and normally people follow that calendar. But there is another major difficulty, historical difficulty. That is the Omer and the counting of the Omer. And I will teach more specifically on what the Omer is, why it's important, because we're in that season right now. I'll do that next week. Our purpose here today, and knowing not everyone is familiar with this, the counting of the Omer is the period between Passover and Shavuot, where we count up from the 16th of Nisan, the day after Passover, up until Shavuot. 49 days of account, 50 days is Shavuot. This is a Leviticus commandment. This is a Torah commandment. It says in the biblical commandment, say to the people of Israel, when you come into the land which I give you and reap its harvest, you shall bring the sheaf of first fruits of your harvest to the priest. He shall wave the sheaf before the Lord, that you may find acceptance on the morrow after the Sabbath. That's when you should do that. Okay? Really important to pay attention to that line. On the day after the Sabbath. Okay? There was an agricultural component to this, the first fruits of the barley harvest, working up to the wheat harvest at Shavuot. It's a spiritual time as well. But it was mired with controversy in the days of the Master. And here is why. The Pharisees looked at this text and said, on the morrow after the Sabbath means the festival Shabbat of Passover. The 15th of Nisan, the day after we start the Omer count. Okay? The Sadducees said, on the morrow of the Sabbath means after the weekly Sabbath that happens during the days of Passover. So that would mean, by the Sadducean reckoning, that it always happened on a Sunday. For the Pharisees, it could happen at any day, because Passover could fall on any day of the week. The morrow after the Sabbath of the Passover, we start the count of the Omer if you're a Pharisee. Next slide. If you're a Sadducee, it does not work that way. It is right after the weekly Sabbath. I hope that makes sense, because it's very, very important. Does that make sense? There's a discussion, a disagreement about what on the morrow of the Sabbath means. But the Pharisees, contrary to what you've been told while sitting in the church pews, the Pharisees were the people's people. They were a party of the people. The people respected their opinions, and what the Pharisees said normally went. And so the Pharisees declared, we're doing it after the 15th. The 16th of Nisan, no matter what day it is, that's when we start the Omer count. Okay? And not on the weekly, not after the weekly, as the Sadducees said. But indications are strong, historically, that the Sadducees, Caiaphas as an example, were, in the year of Yeshua's death, controlling the Sanhedrin. Who was controlling the Sanhedrin? The Sadducees. What was the Sadducees' opinion regarding the Omer count? It takes place after the weekly Sabbath. That's all I need you to know right now. Who determined the start of the month, did we say? The Sanhedrin. The Sadducees are influencing the Sanhedrin. This is going to create a unique situation. And here we get into Tzvi Lichtenstein's explanation. It proposes this harmonization between the Synoptic version and the Johannine version. And as I said in the beginning, it is an opinion. It is speculative, as they all are, but based on Jewish sources to present how this could have happened, and actually did happen in history, that there were 2 days of Passover back to back, the year the Master died. It's quite simple. The Sadducees used their influence. You can't just randomly change the calendar. You can't do that. But you can do something. See, the moon is the moon. There are sometimes errors and variability sometimes, but if your Sadducean party wanted to shift the day of a festival by 1 day, guess what you could do? You could hire false witnesses. You could hire false witnesses who would say that they saw the moon on a different day. You could manipulate the witnesses to have them report something different than what they actually saw to our situation. Rabbi Lichtenstein suggests, based on Talmudic precedent, this is exactly what happened with Caiaphas and his Sadducees and their cronies that year. What they did is this. They sanctified the moon, but they started the month of Nisan one day late. And in so doing, they were able to affect the counting of the Omer to align with their position, and to align with the position of the Pharisees that year, that the Omer count should begin the day after the Passover Sabbath. So if you can show me that graph of the 2 Sabbath thing, that should work. All that happened is they moved things forward. Okay, and just, you can keep that up there for a second. The moon was seen on the right day, but they paid witnesses to deny that, to move the month of Nisan one day forward. By shifting the celebration of Passover one day later, Lichtenstein says that in the year our Master died, Erev Pesach, Nisan 14, was actually on a Thursday. It actually was as the Gospels report. It was as the Gospels report. That means that by the actual calendar, the Seder should have been held Thursday night. Friday actually would have been the 15th of Nisan. It would have been a festival Shabbat, which would have then moved into the weekly Shabbat. Friday for Passover, Saturday was the regular weekly Shabbat. And what that means is that the Omer count, the celebration, would have actually begun by this reckoning on the 15th, which was a Saturday. The gospel tradition says Thursday night, Seder, Friday, Passover, Sabbath. Saturday was a Sabbath. There were 2 Sabbaths in this year. And I know it's confusing, but I think I can make it work if you just see me through to the end. Lichtenstein and others postulate that the Sadducees hired false witnesses to forestall the month by one day. They used bribes to influence the Sanhedrin to delay declaring the new moon by one day, therefore forcing everything to shift forward. It should have been as the Gospels reported it. But because there was corruption and bribing and Sadducees and Sanhedrin tinkering, everything moved forward an actual day. Why did they do that? Well, because then they could be right. They could have their cake and eat it too. They were able to count the Omer and celebrate Shavuot the way that they would want to because they had forced everything forward. The weekly Sabbath and the Yom Tov now coincided. Therefore, Pharisaic and Sadducean opinion lined up. In this way, they forced the whole population to celebrate the way they wanted to do it. Now that seems incredibly far-fetched and speculative, and how can you possibly say that? Well, there are some points of evidence. First of all, we know that this controversy was very, very real. We know that the Sadducees, the house of Boethus, the Sadducees and the Pharisees, had this debate about the Omer controversy. We also know that the Pharisees and Sadducees were themselves criticized by Yeshua at times for doing what? Putting traditions above the weighty matters. In other words, this is not at all beyond the pale, that they would shift things around to make their opinions look right. We also know that the Sadducees were corrupt. Rome was their daddy. power hungry. And we know that the calendar also was somewhat fluid and open to potential error. But we also know that this actually happened, that there was a precedent for this that is reported in the Talmud. There is evidence in the Talmudic story about the Sadducees hiring false witnesses to mislead the sages with false reports about the sighting of the new moon. In this story, they hired false witnesses for 200 zuzim to report that they had seen the new moon and to declare the new month in order to shift the date of Passover to force it to coincide with their interpretation. In other words, the Talmud reports that this exact thing had previously happened. It is reported. So some were thinking one day was correct, others were thinking the following day was correct, and they were thinking, oh, well, the court will settle this, but they really didn't. And they ended up going with the dates that the Sanhedrin suggested. So, according to Lichtenstein, the Sadducees artificially manipulated the calendar through the power of the Sanhedrin, delaying the month of Nisan, delaying the celebration of Passover. And they had the right to do that because they were the Sanhedrin. However, and this is the big one, there were Pharisees who knew that this was a deception. There were Pharisees who knew that that had taken place, that the month had been mistakenly reported for theological and manipulative reasons. And in that case, these Pharisees said, guess what? We're not doing it. We're celebrating Passover on the actual day that it is supposed to be happening. We're not letting these Sadducees and Sanhedrin mess with us. We're doing it on the right day. So here's the major takeaway. John's sequence, you will notice, coincides with what I just told you about the Sadducees. John reports the Sadducean observance of Passover. The Gospels report the Pharisaic observation of Passover that year, meaning that it happened as they report it in Pharisaic circles. By the gospel reckoning, then, this was a Seder that Yeshua had. It was a Seder on the 14th of Nisan by the actual calendar. Now, this minority of Israel, as I said, most people went along with the Sanhedrin and just did whatever they said, but this minority of Israel was adamant about making sure that Seders were held in accordance with the actual day, regardless of the majority opinion. There is a further note from Lichtenstein's commentary that's important that makes the point that this is not Yeshua's normal way of being. Yeshua was not a renegade. He was not a rebel. He was not always trying to disrupt and turn over the apple cart with everything. He followed much of tradition. But this particular year, knowing that he was going to die on the cross on this day, he took advantage of the controversy that was taking place so that he could, as he said, I have desired earnestly to celebrate this Passover with you. And by this quirk, this twist, this controversy that was going on, he was able to do that. Now, as I said, speculation, they all are. But this makes good sense. Why does it make good sense? Because there's a historical precedent. There is culture and context. It's in Jewish writing. It's logical. It's harmonious. And it's possible. There are some great speculations out there. There really are. But there are problems if you try to get around some of the difficulties, especially as it relates to the fact that Yeshua died on Friday. You can't just randomly switch it and say, no, it was Wednesday, it was Thursday. the Gospels report that Yeshua died on a Friday. And we see also in the Gospel text, it says things like, when the evening had come, since it was the day of preparation, that is the day before the Sabbath. Joseph of Arimathea is taking Yeshua down. Luke, it was the day of preparation and the Sabbath was beginning. It was, according to the Gospels, on Friday. But the only way these stories can parallel is if something like this took place, where there were two distinct celebrations of Passover that year. And all those Sadducees and all the people who were in Pilate's court in what we would perceive to be on the Passover, as we talked about, all those people, they hadn't had Passover yet because they were celebrating according to the majority opinion of the Sanhedrin. Our guys had. They were celebrating according to the Pharisaic reckoning. And there's a really interesting last consideration. Well, two quick ones. How could it be that if they did something early, how could they have actually called that a Passover Seder? It had to be on the 14th of Nisan. How would they get a lamb sacrificed if that wasn't happening in Israel? Well, first of all, it was the 14th of Nisan by the Pharisaic calendar. But secondly, they had possibly, speculative, they had supporters, Pharisees, that were also having to figure out, how are we going to slaughter a lamb on the Passover? And some of them could have been priests who served in the temple, who could have sacrificed a Pesach lamb in the temple, or they could have just had a thanksgiving offering, which is very similar to the Passover lamb. So there is a way it could be done. But speaking of sympathetic Pharisees, this is the really interesting point I want to make. On the first day of unleavened bread, when they sacrificed the Passover lamb, his disciples said to him, "Where will you have us go and prepare for you to eat the Passover?" And he sent two of his disciples and said to them, "Go into the city, and a man carrying a jar of water will meet you, and follow him. And wherever he enters, say to the householder, 'The teacher says, where is my guest room? Where am I to eat the Passover with my disciples?'" This is on the Pharisaic Passover, okay? This is before anything had happened. This is the Pharisaic Passover. Is that a randomly weird detail that the Gospels put into the story? Only the Gospels. John doesn't say anything about a man with a water jar. That's a random detail, isn't it? Have you ever wondered why that's in there? Here's Lichtenstein's speculation. Yeshua knew what was up. He knew this was unorthodox, pun intended. He knew that special arrangements would need to be made. If he were going to celebrate the Passover that he longed to have, he needed to find a place where that was actually happening. And where would that have been happening? Only in a Pharisaic home, a sympathizer's home. Someone who discredited and ignored the Sadducees and the Sanhedrin said, "Nope, guess what? We're doing a Seder on the right night in my house." They also would have needed to be sympathetic to Yeshua's cause. They would have needed someone who was a Pharisee celebrating on the 14th of Nisan and would also open their home to Yeshua and his disciples to have a Seder. Now that's a probably very small portion of people in Jerusalem. Was Yeshua a prophet? Could Yeshua see forward? Did Yeshua know? We believe he did. And so Yeshua tells his disciples specifically, this is the guy you need to find. Why? He understands. He's sympathetic. He will take you to a Pharisee's home, and this Pharisee who understands us and understands our dilemma will open up this upper room, and there we will celebrate the last Passover. Is that awesomely cool? I love it. Speculation? Yes, I've already said that. But it makes sense. It's a random detail in the story that, I don't even understand. I've always wondered why that would be pointed out. And this brings illumination. And all of these things are a possible reason why we have different accounts, suggesting different days and different kinds of meals, and finding strange men with water jugs, and so many other things that do not seem on their face to be able to be reconciled. This can reconcile it with some added historical, Jewish, contextual detail that's phenomenally amazing. So, is that chart up there? The last chart. It's small, I know. But you can see it now. You can see how it comes together. John's gospel, and this is in conclusion. You ready to conclude? John's gospel reports the traditional observance of Shabbat that took place in the year our Master died, according to the majority opinion in Israel, according to the Sanhedrin. Friday was the Passover sacrifices were offered on Friday, according to John. And then it moved that night into one Shabbat, which was the weekly Shabbat and the Yom Tov Shabbat. That's how they wanted it. They manipulated the calendar to get it. The Pharisees below, no, not that. We know when the moon was. Thursday night, we have our Seders. There's 2 Shabbats that week, and that's what they report in the Gospels. And we see the events as they took place in the Gospels, and that's my concluding point. All of this is intense. It's brilliant. Different reckonings of the calendar depending on your party. The calendar itself, the BaOmer, the Sadducees, the Pharisees, oh my, it's all brilliant. But listen, cultures, conflicts, crucifixion. The thing that matters most is indisputable. There was a resurrection. There was a resurrection that took place. Now, this year, I want you to know this. If it had happened according to the Pharisaic reckoning, then that barley harvest would not have coincided in the same way with the resurrection of the first fruits of the dead, which was Yeshua. This conflict and all this mishigas and all this trouble and everything that got arranged perfectly aligned with the death, burial, and resurrection, the first fruits of our Messiah, Yeshua. It is quite possible that God is big enough to know and understand that all of this was going to happen. And as they're waving the barley, and who cares how we got there, what they're actually in line with is the resurrection of the Messiah from the grave. And that world-changing resurrection is the part of the story that matters most. And these details we've dug into are important. This is one way. It's a good logical way to interpret the challenges that we see in the text. But regarding the climax of the story, that is the resurrection of the first fruits from the dead, as the Talmud says, there is no difficulty. Amen. Let's stand together. עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הרצון, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסד הארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגובהי מרומים, הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, אמת מלכנו אפס זולתו, ככתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום והשבות אל לבביך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחתנו. ונאמר וחיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד, ושמו אחד. On that day, the Lord will be one, and his name will be one. May it be soon and in our day. I should tell you also that Lichtenstein is not the only one who, I don't even know if he originated that theory. It's in a number of circles. Church theologians talk about it, the same thing. So it's not just some wacky Messianic dude. But he was pretty awesome. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift his countenance upon you and give you his peace. Peace. B'Shem Yeshua. Yivarechecha Adonai vayishmerecha. Yo'er Adonai panav elecha vihuneka. Yisa Adonai panav elecha. Ve'asem lecha. Shalom. Shabbat shalom, my friends. Enjoy those last pieces of matzah.